The Whispering Caves. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow over the jagged peaks of the Thundercliff Mountains. Lila tightened the straps of her satchel and glanced at her map, its edges worn and smudged from weeks of travel. The Whispering Caves were closed. The story said they were cursed, that none who entered ever returned. But Lila wasn't interested in curses. She was after the Starstone. Her older brother, Jarek, had scoffed when she announced her plan to find the legendary gem. "That thing's a myth," he said, crossing his arms. "You'll be chasing shadows and wasting time we don't have. Stay and help us patch the roof instead." Lila had shaken her head. "The roof won't matter if the village starves," she'd replied. The drought had turned the fields into dust, and the winter stores were almost gone. Starstone wasn't just a treasure, it was salvation. If the stories were true, it could buy everything the village needed. Food, water, tools. It could save the families who'd been struggling for years, including her own. The cold wind snapped her back to the present. The mouth of the Whispering Caves yawned before her, dark and unwelcoming. Even from several paces away, she could hear faint whispers. She shivered and lit her lantern. With a deep breath, she stepped inside. The air grew damp as she moved deeper into the cave. Tiny flecks of crystal embedded in the walls reflected the lantern's light, casting the space in a faint, ethereal glow. The whispers grew louder, though they didn't seem to come from any one direction. They wrapped around her, soft and persistent. First they were unintelligible, like the murmur of distant voices. Then they began to form words.
"Turn back. You don't belong here. This path is not yours."
Lila gritted her teeth and kept walking. "It's just the wind," she told herself, though she wasn't sure she believed it. She clutched her satchel tighter, as though it could shield her from whatever watched her from the shadows. After what felt like hours, the narrow tunnel opened into a massive chamber. Stalactites hung like jagged teeth from the ceiling, and in the center of the room was a pedestal, bathed in a pale, otherworldly light. Atop it sat the Starstone, a gem the size of her fist. Its surface shimmered with a shifting array of colors, blues, purples, golds, like the aurora captured in stone. Lila's breath caught. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning for traps. The air around the pedestal seemed alive, humming faintly. Her instinct screamed at her to be careful. She reached out, hesitating only for a moment, before brushing her fingers against the gem's surface. The moment she touched it, the ground trembled. Shadows spilled from the corners of the chamber, swirling together until they formed a figure, cloaked in darkness. Its face was featureless, but its presence was suffocating. Like the weight of the entire cave had shifted onto her shoulders.
"You come from the Starstone,"
the figure said, its voice a blend of 1,000 murmurs.
"Do you understand the cost?"
Lila's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stand tall. "My village needs this," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll pay whatever price I have to." The figure tilted its head, although amused.
"The Starstone grants power. It demands sacrifice. If you take it, you will never find your way out of these caves. Your life will be forfeit. Are you willing to trade your freedom for theirs?"
Lila froze. She thought of Jarek, of the children who played barefoot in the dusty village square. She thought of their hunger, their struggle, and how much one gem could change. "I am," she said firmly, her voice unwavering. The figure extended a shadowy hand toward her.
"Then take it, and may your light guide them."
Lila grasped the Starstone. The moment her fingers closed around it, the whispers erupted into a deafening roar. The chamber dissolved into darkness, and she felt herself falling. Her last thought before the world disappeared was of her village, and the hope that she'd made the right choice. When Lila opened her eyes, she was standing at the edge of the village. The Starstone pulsed faintly in her hand, its light soft and warm. For a moment she thought the figure's warning had been a trick. She was home. But something was wrong. The world felt different. The colors of the sky seemed duller, the sound of the wind distant. Lila turned toward the village. As she walked, she realized that people didn't see her. Jarek stood in the square, talking to the village elder, his face lined with worry. She called out to him, but he didn't respond. She reached out to touch his shoulder, but her hand passed through him like mist. The figure had kept its promise. She had returned with the Starstone, but she was no longer truly part of the world she'd just saved. Months passed. With the Starstone, the village prospered. The drought ended, the fields flourished, and no one went hungry. But Lila remained a shadow, unseen and unheard. At first she tried to find a way back, retracing her steps to the mountains, but the caves were gone, swallowed by the earth. In time, she came to accept her fate. She watched over the village, her presence invisible, but constant. When Jarek sat by the fire, staring at the Starstone with a mix of awe and sorrow, she stood beside him. When the children laughed and played in the fields, she smiled, knowing they had a future. Lila had traded her freedom for her village's survival, and though the price was steep, she would pay it again without hesitation. Because sometimes true heroism wasn't about glory or recognition. It's about sacrifice and a legacy worth leaving behind. If you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment, and let me know what kind of story you want me to cover next. Cheers.